For 21 years, that company was my second home. Sometimes, it felt like my first. I joined when the office was small and struggling. The carpets were worn. The computers were outdated, and everyone did 3 jobs at once. We didn't have fancy titles back then. We had long hours, big dreams, and a belief that if we worked hard enough, it would all be worth it. I was young when I started. Fresh out of school. Nervous, eager, and grateful just to have a steady paycheck. My first desk was wedged between a printer that constantly jammed and a window that wouldn't close properly in winter. I stayed late every night, not because anyone asked me to, but because I cared. Over the years the company grew. New floors, new offices, new executives. I stayed. People above me came and went. CEOs changed. Strategies changed. But I remained the constant. I learned every system, every shortcut, every mistake the company ever made. And how to fix it. When something broke, they called me. When a major client was about to walk away, they sent me in. When nobody could find answers, I already had them. I trained dozens of employees. Some of them later became my managers. Others became executives. They used to joke that if I ever left, half the company would collapse. At the time, I laughed with them. I believed loyalty went both ways. I missed birthdays, anniversaries, family dinners. I told myself, it's temporary, it'll pay off. And for a while, it did. My performance reviews were flawless. Not good, perfect. Year after year, I received awards, bonuses, and public praise in meetings. My name was attached to successful projects that brought in millions. When the company needed someone they could trust, they trusted me. I thought I was safe. Then everything changed. The company was acquired by a much larger corporation. New ownership, new leadership, new language. Suddenly, words like family disappeared and were replaced with efficiency, restructuring, and realignment. At first, they smiled a lot. They told us not to worry. Nothing is going to change. They said, we value experience. They said, you're all secure. They said, I'd been around long enough to know those words meant the opposite. Slowly, familiar faces started disappearing. People with years of experience were quietly let go. Younger, cheaper replacements arrived. Meetings I'd always attended were suddenly rescheduled, without me. Decisions I used to make were made without my input. Still, I stayed professional. I kept working. I kept delivering results. After 21 years, I believed my record would protect me. I was wrong. One Friday afternoon, my calendar alert popped up. Mandatory meeting. Conference Room C. No explanation, no agenda. Conference Room C wasn't for casual meetings. It was where bad news lived. When I walked in, 4 executives were already seated on one side of the table. Human resources sat with them. Papers were neatly stacked. Pens were aligned perfectly. Nobody offered me water. Nobody asked how I was doing. That's when I felt it. That cold, sinking realization. After 21 years of loyalty, dedication, and sacrifice, they had already decided my future, and they were about to make the biggest mistake of their careers. The moment I sat down, I knew this meeting wasn't a discussion. It was a decision already made without me. 4 executives sat across the long table. All younger than me. All wearing the same calm, practiced expressions. Human resources sat slightly to the side, flipping through a folder she already knew by heart. The door closed softly behind me, but the sound felt final. No one spoke for a few seconds. That silence was deliberate. Finally, the CEO leaned forward and folded his hands. Thank you for coming on such short notice, he said, smiling the kind of smile that never reaches the eyes. We'll get straight to the point. My stomach tightened, but my face stayed neutral. Years in corporate rooms had taught me how to hide fear. We've been restructuring the organization, he continued. And after careful review, we've decided to move in a different direction. Different direction. Those words have ended more careers than any failure ever has. The CFO slid a folder toward me. You have 2 options, he said, his voice smooth and rehearsed. Option 1, you resign effective immediately. We provide 3 weeks of severance and a neutral reference. 3 weeks. After 21 years. Before I could react, he added, Option 2, we terminate your position today due to restructuring. No severance, no vacation payout. And the file will reflect that your role was eliminated. That was the threat. Sign quietly and walk away with scraps. or leave with nothing and a stain on my record. They gave me 30 minutes to decide. I opened the folder. Inside was a resignation letter already written. My name typed neatly at the top. All I had to do was sign at the bottom. It included language releasing the company from all future claims. They had planned this carefully. They expected fear. They expected obedience. I looked up and studied their faces. They weren't angry. They weren't emotional. They were confident. This was routine to them. Another, costly employee, removed from the spreadsheet. One of them checked his watch. Another tapped his pen. I felt something unexpected rise inside me, not panic. Not sadness. Clarity. They believed they were in control. They believed I had no leverage. They believed 21 years could be erased with a single signature. I closed the folder. I'll resign, I said calmly. Relief spread across the table instantly. One of them even smiled, genuinely this time. The tension disappeared to them. The problem was solved. Excellent decision, the CEO said. Very professional. Then I added, but I'll write my own resignation letter. The room froze. The HR representative hesitated. We've prepared one that covers all necessary legal. I'll write my own. I repeated, steady and firm. Unless you're telling me I'm not allowed to choose my own words. They exchanged glances. They couldn't force me to sign theirs without admitting coercion. And coercion would cause problems, legal problems. After a brief pause, the CEO nodded. Fine. We'll need it by the end of the day. You'll have it within the hour, I said, standing up. As I walked out, I felt their eyes follow me. They still thought they had won. They believed this was just a formality. Back in my office, I closed the door and locked it. I didn't panic. I didn't rush. Because the truth was, I'd been preparing for this moment for weeks. The letter was already written. One sentence. Carefully crafted, legally precise. They had given me an ultimatum. They just didn't realize I had turned it into a trap. I sat alone in my office. The door locked, the noise of the company fading into the background. My desk was still perfectly organized, just the way I had kept it for years. Family photos lined the corner. A small plant my team gave me for my 20th anniversary rested near the window. In less than an hour, none of this would belong to me. But instead of feeling rushed, I felt calm. I opened my laptop and pulled up the document I had written weeks earlier during a sleepless night. Back then, I didn't know exactly when they would come for me. Only that they would. The signs had been everywhere. Meetings without me. Decisions made behind my back. Responsibilities slowly stripped away. This moment wasn't a surprise. The letter on my screen was short. Just one sentence. But every word mattered. There were no emotional phrases, no accusations, no explanations. It wasn't angry, and it wasn't defensive, it was precise. The sentence stated that my resignation would be effective only after the company completed full payment of everything legally owed to me. Salary, bonuses, unused vacation, benefits, stock compensation, anything covered by my contract and the law. To anyone reading quickly, it looked harmless. Professional, normal. To anyone who truly understood legal language, it was a loaded weapon. I read it again. Slowly. Out loud, then one more time. This sentence didn't attack them. It didn't threaten them. It simply shifted control. Until they paid everything, I was still an employee, with all the rights that came with that. They had asked me to resign. I was resigning on my terms. I printed the letter on company letterhead, signed it in blue ink, and made copies for my records. My hands didn't shake. My heart wasn't racing. 21 years in corporate rooms had trained me for pressure like this. At exactly 4:17 p.m., I walked back into conference room C. They were still there. Coffee cups now sat on the table. Their posture was relaxed. They looked like people who believed the hardest part was over. I handed the letter to the CEO without a word. He skimmed it. Not carefully, just enough to confirm there was a signature. He nodded and passed it down the line. Each of them glanced at it for a few seconds. None of them really read it. HR will process your final compensation, the CFO said casually. You'll receive your severance in your final paycheck. Please put everything in writing, I replied calmly. Mounts, timelines, what's included? The CFO sighed slightly, clearly annoyed. 3 weeks' pay. Vacation time. Standard procedure. I nodded, then I stood up. No arguments, no emotion, no victory speech. I walked out at 40:24 p.m. back at my office. I packed my personal belongings into 3 boxes. A framed photo from my first year. Notes from former team members thanking me for mentoring them. My favorite pen. Given to me by a manager who had long since retired. My phone buzzed with messages from coworkers asking what happened. I didn't respond. That evening, I drove home in silence. No music, no calls, just the sound of the road and my own thoughts. They believed it was over. 5 days later, they realized their mistake. At 7:43 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered calmly. This is the company's legal counsel. The voice said. We need to discuss the language in your resignation letter. I smiled. The sentence had done its job, and from that moment on, their lawyer wouldn't stop calling. 5 days passed. No emails, no paperwork, no final paycheck. That silence told me everything. On the 5th morning, at exactly 7:43 a.m., my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but the area code was local. I answered on the 4th ring, my voice calm, my coffee still steaming on the table. This is corporate legal counsel, the man said. His tone was controlled, but something underneath it felt strained. We need to discuss your resignation letter. There it was. The moment they finally read the sentence. I'm listening, I replied. He cleared his throat. There appears to be some ambiguity in the language you used. Specifically, the phrase stating your resignation is effective upon receipt of complete settlement. There was no ambiguity, only consequences. I explained slowly, carefully, using the same calm tone I had used in boardrooms for years. My resignation would only take effect after they paid everything I was legally owed. Until then, I remained an employee. The line went silent. I could hear papers shuffling, muffled voices in the background, someone whispering urgently. When he spoke again, his voice was tighter. And what exactly do you believe the company owes you? I had been ready for that question. I opened a spreadsheet on my laptop. Tabs filled the screen. Salary, bonuses, vacation benefits, stock compensation. Each item supported by contracts, emails, and policy documents. I started with the basics. Final salary. Accrued vacation. Outstanding reimbursements. Then I moved to the items they never expected me to mention. Performance bonuses written into my contract. Benefits triggered by a change in ownership. Compensation clauses that protected long-term employees from forced exits. With every number I listed, the silence on the other end grew heavier. This is highly unusual, the lawyer said finally. No, I replied gently. It's highly documented. He tried to push back. Said the company disagreed. Said they would review the terms. Said litigation was an option. I didn't argue. Instead, I explained something even more dangerous for them. Until my resignation became effective, I was still employed. That meant my salary was still accruing. My benefits were still active. Any attempt to lock me out of systems or cut access could create additional legal exposure. There was a long pause. Then the call ended abruptly. Less than an hour later. My work email was suddenly reactivated. They were scrambling. Throughout the day, the calls came in waves. Different numbers. Different voices, same concern. They wanted clarification. They wanted reassurance. They wanted control back. They didn't get it. By evening, the lawyer called again, this time less confident. We're prepared to discuss a settlement, he said carefully. I smiled to myself. This wasn't about settlement anymore. This was about panic. They were realizing that their rushed Friday ultimatum had opened a door they couldn't easily close. I reminded him of something important. If this went to court, it wouldn't just be about my resignation. It would be about patterns. Older employees removed. Pay cuts disguised as restructuring. Pressure tactics meant to force resignations. Discovery would be uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. He went quiet again. By the end of the week, their tone had completely changed. No more threats. No more authority. Just damage control. They had tried to make me disappear quietly. Instead, they had triggered a problem that reached the boardroom. And now, every call from their lawyer sounded less like confidence, and more like fear. The calls didn't stop. Some came early in the morning, others late at night. Different numbers. Different voices. Always the same purpose: control the damage. By the second week, the tone had completely changed. The confidence was gone. No more legal threats. No more corporate language about policy procedure. Now it was about resolution. And, moving forward. The lawyer called again on a Thursday afternoon. "Would like to settle this matter quickly and professionally," he said. His voice was careful now, measured, like every word had been approved by a room full of executives. "I'm open to hearing an offer," I replied. The first number he gave me was large, but not large enough. I declined without raising my voice. There was silence on the line. Then a quiet sigh. Over the next few days, the offers increased. Each call came with urgency. They didn't want court. They didn't want documents made public. They didn't want a former long-term employee explaining under oath how older workers were pushed out. I didn't threaten them. I didn't need to. They already knew what I had. Eventually, the lawyer asked for a final meeting. Not in person, over a secure call, multiple executives present. Their tone was respectful now, almost careful. They presented the final offer. It covered everything: salary, bonuses, unused vacation benefits, stock compensation, and severance. A clean break. No admission of wrongdoing. Confidentiality on both sides. I asked for one addition. A written letter of recommendation stating my performance had been exemplary throughout my career. There was a pause. Then agreement. 3 weeks later, the money arrived in my account. Seeing the balance change didn't feel like victory. It felt like closure. I signed the final paperwork, returned my access credentials, and officially resigned, this time on my terms. No more calls, no more pressure, just silence. A few days later, I received messages from former coworkers. They had heard what happened, not the details, just the outcome. Some thanked me. Others said they wished they had known their rights sooner. I took a break after that. For the first time in decades, I woke up without email alerts or meetings waiting. I spent time with my family. I traveled, I breathed, and I reflected. This story isn't about revenge in the way movies show it. There was no shouting, no courtroom drama, no public humiliation. The revenge was quiet. It was knowing my value. It was refusing to be bullied. It was understanding the rules better than the people who thought they controlled them. They made me resign after 21 years. They thought it was the end. It wasn't. It was the moment everything shifted in my favor. And the lawyer. For a long time he kept calling, checking, confirming, making sure there were no loose ends. Making sure the problem they created was truly gone. Eventually, even he stopped. Because the mistake had been paid for. And I walked away not broken, but free. They gave me 30 minutes to resign after 21 years, so I wrote one sentence that cost them everything. 5 days later, their lawyer wouldn't stop calling.